Up, random rockers. My voice is slightly shot. Not sure you can tell, given the audio of my recording gear. But regardless, go Cards. Let's make it 12 this year, guys. Let's make it 12, especially after tonight. Kicking Cincinnati's ass. Though, undeservedly, but, because, we gave them that freaking run, but we managed to sneak one in near the bottom of the ninth. Alright. Keep it up, guys. Keep it up. Alright. Well, this is technically, those of you kind of wonder, how many takes does he do this? This one is number 2, and it's going to stick. Hopefully. And this time I'll probably have a better rundown. This due to the fact that tomorrow, or technically tonight, I'm going to be seeing Thrice I in the Pageant with my girl. I got the tickets. Hell, I'm even probably gonna do something special, but you're probably not gonna see it until Monday. And unfortunately, you're probably not gonna see Opeth till Monday, because apparently that is a big release and not one of those smaller releases that you can get stuff early when you're at Slackers. Yay! That just makes it suck for me by the time I finally decide to upload the damn thing. Regardless, because of the fact that tomorrow I'm going to see Thrice concert, I've decided, screw it, I'm not waiting anymore. It's time for Random Rock Countdown. And, Thrice, baby. So, I'm not sure I should probably put this in any particular, it's a particular order, but not going to bother to number it until we technically get to the top 3. So, we're going to start with Major Minor. Yellowbellied is a good start, but, it was a good, nice, heavy start for this record. It seems like they're kind of somewhat going more back to basics, similar to another particular album that's later on this list, or coming up on this list, I should say. And then there's Promises, Blinded. I did Cataracts, Call It in the Air, which is a ridiculous thing about a whole coin toss, and, making it seem more life or death in situation, though it's kind of doesn't feel like there's any real stakes to it as much as they're trying to make you feel like, which is sad. And there are better tracks on here they could have chose and had singles for instead of just this track, which is sad. Yellowbellied's good, Promises is good, even Blinded is good. Trading Papers, a lot of these tracks are kind of solid. In the middle of the album, it does start to kind of waver here and there, and Words in the Water is probably the longest song and probably the softest song, too. So it's a nice, very long ballad, but it's by the time, it's really the first 3 tracks for the most part that really kind of hit the most, and the final 3 as well. So they know how to open and close this album pretty well. It's just in the middle, it may seem a little jumbled up, I guess it's just my least favorite. I don't hate this record. I don't hate any of Thrice's albums. It's just my least favorite. Moving on to Identity Crisis, their debut record. There's apparently another track, Madman or something, from some other edition, but it's hard to find that one. The opening title track is solid. It's pretty solid. Phoenix Ignition is also solid. Nice little acoustic opening thing before getting into the nice heavier riffs and, of course, repeating the same first verses as well. Ultra Blue is, of course, one of the bigger standouts. The thing is, and the funny thing is, it's hard to remember some of these first 3 albums to a certain degree that I can really kind of dive and sink my teeth into without, deciding to be cheap and go and look at the lyric sheet. I know there's another track on here somewhere, like I think A Torch to End All Torches or Unquestioned Answers or something that really or even maybe under par, I think, that really kind of does stand out a little bit on this record. Eventually, they find a way to finally improve upon it, which leads to my next one, The Illusion of Safety. And this album opens up much better and much more memorable, and hooks you already in with Kill Me Quickly, the building up of riffs, and then when the vocals come in and everything starts to come sporadically together, break down sporadically together. Get away! Can't we kill each other quickly? Quick enough to wanna feel it. It's just of course they deliver it better than me, but still, you remember this track, but when you hear it, you'll know what I mean. And then, of course, it's a lot more heavier and brutal, and I think this is the first time that, if I can remember the producer, damn it, yes, I'll have to look, you know what, no, I don't got time, screw it. But, whoever they did, they eventually kept him for the next album, which we will get to later in the list. But before we end this off with this one and get to the next album, which y'all kind of thought I would put last, and even I did too. But for that, I mean, of course, most people would know their singles, Betrayal of Symptom, Deadbolt. And Deadbolt, I mean, the thing compared to the music video, the additional little piano thing was a nice little touch. And kind of did show that they were willing to experiment a little more with this record. And it seems a little more skate punk compared to their last record is more skate punk melodic hardcore. This one still does, but it seems to be far more closer to post-hardcore. And adds a little more, I guess, speed metal elements and maybe some sort of crust punky thrashcore here and there. But overall, it does seem more skate punk oriented compared to their more the previous albums, and it does have some more subtle emo moments, I guess, and not in like a terrible kind of way, like more Jimmy World-ish here and there, even though like musically they're kind of don't hold up as well as I used to think that they did. But yeah, I mean, tracks that really do kind of like Trust is definitely one that kind of hits some people with So Strange I Remember You. Apparently my girlfriend liked this one. So I mean, there's definitely some hooks here and there once you hear the songs, then you'll click, but I'm not sure you'll kind of forget about them. That's the issues that some of these past three albums have. However, this next one, not as much. It's just some tracks are kind of just meh, and others are pretty damn solid for me. And that album is one y'all thought I was going to put last, and I did too, of course. For those of you who've seen my review for another album that's on this list, by the way, we'll go to that as well later. And that album is The Issue. This album starts and ends quite well with, of course, the lead single and the second and last single they had on this album, which is, of course, Image of the Invisible, Red Sky, respectively. And Image of the Invisible opens, grid opener of the whole Morse code of the album title, and then the riffs hitting in, and, of course, the nice hardcore punky chanting, especially, and good sing-along chorus that definitely is so meant for to be a good live staple. I hope they use this as a live staple, or at least still have. And of course, Between the End and Where We Lie is a great, I used to call it Daylight, but that's actually, Between the End and Where We Lie is definitely a good follow-up track. Shake's alright. It is but tracks other than that, the tracks in between those two were Between the End and Where We Lie, Atlantic. To some degree, I want to like Hold Fast Hope. But tracks and even the music box is nice, like Moths to Flame, which the opening is what most people, if you hear the opening, it's like, wait, didn't I hear this? It would have confused people because they probably already heard this in the image of the invisible, at the beginning of the image of the Invisible music video. Fun fact, if you did not know that. Destinations is not bad either. The Stand and Feel Your Worth is Of course, Red Sky caps this off brilliantly. And that's kind of where I stand with this record. Some of these tracks, though, despite the fact of, this is back when, you know, we had long album titles and track titles. And yeah, that's why, unless you heard the song, it wouldn't click with you, you know, for some reason. Or titles that just didn't click with you, probably because you didn't hear it in the lyrics at times, because for some reason, I guess. Regardless, Vishu isn't as bad as I thought. I kind of had a weird thing with one of my top threes, but I still think it holds more weight and it has a certain level of consistency to it that maybe VSU didn't have completely, even though part of me wanted to, because it is far more optimistic compared to most of their works before and after. But which is probably the biggest positive I can give it. However, it isn't until the albums that honestly got me into Thrice in the first place, or at least had a certain thing conceptually or thematically that really gave me a reason to want to get into Thrice. But I decided to wait and hold out the following year when the other one came out, and seen it at Walmart and got them all. And it's of course been a while because it seems a little worn, the album covers. And that of course is the Alchemy Index, starting off more specifically with volumes 1 and 2, Fire and Earth. Fire is, of course, the better of the... I find the better of the two in a way. And, of course, this album just doesn't seem like too much, and the thing is, it's not too far off from where they kind of left off with for VSU, since the majority of the way that album was done is very much enthralled into this record. Fire is probably my favorite, but the thing about it is they found a way for people who didn't understand VSU, this Alchemy Index was them taking and pulling it apart and dissecting it, but then they added something else different on another album that would eventually lead into my top 3 in terms of like albums as a whole. I mean, let's face it, the opening track on Fire, Volume 1, Fire Breather, Even the Messenger's great, Backdraft's nice, The Arsonist, which I believe was used as a bonus track for one of the Guitar Hero games, which was kind of nice. I didn't succeed at playing that one. But my favorites that are usually the ones where he focuses more on his clean, sun vocal techniques, gruff as can be, though still kind of gruff for Dustin Kinsry, and that's, you know, with Fire Breather, tracks like Fire Breather that seem anthemic in a way, with Fire Breather and Burn the Fleet. Deluge is probably the one reason why, and it's probably one of the reasons why I can't put this one above the other album, their half of this Alchemy Index. That and Water is just so calming and relaxing to a certain degree. Digital Sea, of course, was a nice track. There's not too bad. Like, some of these tracks I would just use for mere reason of trying to, you know, make love in a way, I guess. I'm not sure that's their intention, but, you know. Regardless, it's nice. And Night Diving is a nice instrumental that kind of brings back some of that heavier elements and has some nice riffs you probably want to go and learn yourself. And does kind of break up the monotony of that half of the disc before going into the softer, even softer, and not as nearly memorable tracks as The Wailer and Kings Upon the Main. Which overall it isn't a bad record. I mean, however, then we have of course have the final half, volumes 3 and 4, Air and Earth. Air, honestly, of all the 4 parts of the Alchemy Index, is probably my favorite. Earth and Fire are probably tied to a certain degree, but I'd say that would be an accurate statement. All the tracks on Air are really great, and between all these tracks, and the song from Michael Millick, they all really do flow well together. The acoustics and everything, arrangements, and it really did show a good maturity, a better, more mature side, and a different side of Thrice that was more acceptable and actually felt different for most fans. Earth doing the same thing, even an interesting acoustic cover of The Earth Isn't Humming. Probably better than a cover they actually did with Send Me an Angel or something, which I never knew about till recently. Figure that, I guess. The thing about Earth is that's why it's a little bit of a iffy in here and there. It's just a matter of whether or not you... I almost want to give Earth a slight edge over Fire, unfortunately, because of the fact that I would prefer the final track, which is my least favorite on there. It's like, whether or not, at this point, it's more of the fact of whether or not you like Child of Dust or The Flame Deluge. Child of Dust is a much better written track and a better thought out track as opposed to The Flame Deluge, and therefore it has a slight edge, or this gives Volume 4 Earth a slight edge over Fire. And for that reasoning, on top of Air being my favorite, it is why this half of the Alchemy Index is the better half. And not to mention, if not for this half, we wouldn't be getting into probably my third favorite, which is now in the top 3 here, my third favorite album from them, even though sometimes it might switch up here and there, it just depends, but honestly, I'm just going to give it the third highest rank, because it actually, even because the album in its entirety is it is pretty solid. Some tracks I don't hit, it still has some slight issues similar to the earlier albums I mentioned, within the album that would follow this album, Major Minor, and stuff like that. And we're already having bluesier elements. I mean, a lot of the ideas that these would have, the next album would have, but they would be more improved upon. And that album is Beggars. All the World Is Mad. Great opener. The way his vocals come off are awesome. Even though I always call the way, like, Come What May for some reason. Don't understand why, but or at least my CD player calls it Come What May. I don't know. It's weird. Circles is nice. I think Circles is a nice, softer track, and then a lot of it also comes off like a little Radiohead-ish in places in terms of the guitar work, in like that sort of the bends and maybe OK Computer kind of way. And some of the electronic elements really showcase that too. Doublespeak is just an awesome, nice little sort of, has a sort of 60s big, like a lot of Beatles, Rolling Stones stuff kind of flow in, sort of garage rocky in a way, but not too much like the others, and certain indie folk elements too, here and there. It doesn't seem like so pretentious or monotonous. It actually really flows well, and every track just makes you want to just bounce and dance, It's a good newer album for Old Tommy, and they never got a chance, because due to family issues, they never got a chance to promote this and give it the respect that it deserves. And I think it's highly underrated. It's highly underrated and highly underappreciated. Which is why and probably for that, it is why maybe it's number 3 and not higher. I mean, and the title track is awesome. Just his vocals are great, and you could tell with this record that what would become of one of my later albums that are in the top 2. Part of this thing is part of the reason for that, as well as Vyashu and this album, The Artist in the Ambulance, guys. Sure, maybe the only big flaw I can say is that, with the exception of maybe the singles, and of course the track The Melting Point of Wax, which are the highlights to me, or standouts for me the most, but there are other tracks on here that are really good and take a while to remember the names of this actual song, since they're super long, just like the album title, but the album title's more memorable, as well as the title track, of course, for that reason. But, I mean, all these songs are just, even from the start of Cold Cash and Colder Hearts, another issue of dealing with greed, just all these things, it's just all sort of these darker heavier, more brutal, and it's just further improved upon and found a perfect balance of what they were doing with Identity Crisis and what they were doing, so most part, right. Some things didn't transition into this album, but didn't have to, because it just worked the best that it could, and it really felt a lot more crust punky, sort of very thrash, just punky thrashed core, but with still the more melodic hardcore tendencies of a perfectly good post-hardcore sound that really kind of, and lyrically speaking, it could definitely, compared to most albums that were of that era during the higher days of the emo and screamo and stuff, this album is one of the many that rules them all. Aside from, like, Brand New's Deja Attendu, of course. Fellow band members. And, of course, I mean, Stare at the Sun, definitely, if you're, like, having religious issues and stuff, or at least a certain, like, existential sort of crisis, I guess, or spiritual existentialism and some spiritual crisis of some sort. And it definitely, like, hits you, and you're just, I mean, I'm due for a miracle. For a miracle. I'm waiting for a sign as I stare straight into the sun, and I won't close my eyes until I understand a goodbye. Or your goodbye. I'm trying to remember how that went. I mean, and each track just finds a way to, like, finds a perfect way to just, it all flows well together. It hits the hardest that most albums did. That is, and it would have remained number one. However, y'all know this was coming from the moment I reviewed the damn thing. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. This album found a perfect balance between my number two and, of course, VSU, whatever number that is. I mean, and what's even makes it even better, I remember the name of the tracks of every, it helps that it's short, most of the track titles are shorter, and they hit hard and to the point. Like, this album, I haven't felt anything this grand or great since Artist in the Ambulance. And it kind of also helps that, you know, one of the guys that mentioned Artist in the Ambulance and how good it was, he liked that one compared to this one prior to having gotten this album. And I heard this, I'm like, if the rock critic does not like this album and considered it the same way I do with Album of the Year, I might flip out. Luckily, that's not the case for those of you who keep up with this guy, with Crash Thompson, because he said the right fucking thing, because I knew he would, because if you liked Artist Ambulance, my God, you're going to love this. And even if you liked VSU, because technically a lot of the experimentation elements are there, but it's definitely hits hard in that Artist Ambulance way. It definitely just accommodates everything they've done. But it's more like finds that balance between VSU and Artist in the Ambulance, but yet kind of goes into that in terms of like that heavy, visceral, hard, straightforward, in-your-face side. Which, by the way, for Artist in the Ambulance, all that's left, great fucking riffs and drums. And that's something this album really has, too. A lot of, and Hurricane opens this up great, from the acoustic start to the, which, by the way, you start to notice, near the end, you don't notice that they kind of end things off in a way that kind of comes full circle with using the same, ending with the same notes, piano-wise. And after you hear that and go back when you start over with Hurricane, you hear it in acoustics, but eventually before the thing that's building up to, with the heaviness comes in, parts come in, you hear the piano. Like if you like your ears start to hear piano. I mean, that says something about this record, that there's some little things you can still go into and notice. Notice multiple times. It has enough replay value in it, even far more than Artist in the Ambulance ever did. And I mean, Blood on the Sand was a great track. Black Honey, I originally didn't like Black Honey, but it grew on me, and I'm glad that it's getting the radio airplay it is. It's the first time Thrice finally gets some big radio airplay around here, and is actually getting noticed and put on. I was very upset when they didn't announce it, the September 30th one, until like sometime a little later, and I was kind of like, you guys are reading assholes, but whatever, point. And of course, the Death from Above, which is just all these tracks. It knows how to find the perfect balance between the much softer moments and the harder moments. And when those harder moments come in and harder, they're dark and brutal in its own right, just like how Artist Ambulance did. And they hit the right notes. It balances itself perfectly well, better than what VSU ever did. And it's even far more memorable, especially all the title tracks. All the titles of these tracks are shorter, to the point. You remember them, and you remember the actual songs themselves when you clicks to you. And what's great is it's kind of feels like a gapless album. It all just flows together so well. It is probably the best. It probably is, was, and will be the best album they've ever done. And I'm afraid for when they come up with a new one. And, speaking of what I said with Brand New, they're the reason why they got back together. This is the comeback. Not only is this album worthy album of the year, and one of the reasons why, and of course one of the reasons why I'm wanting to go see Thrice, and why I've decided to do this list, finally decided to do this list, Random Rock Countdown style, of course, in the first place. And I hope you all enjoy this. It's long, but hopefully compared to my previous one I was doing, but I hope you enjoyed this and actually got a little bit more out of it than what I originally did. And yeah, I mean, even my girlfriend, who I just recently got into Thrice so I could go see them in concert, even she said that of all the albums out there, that most of the songs she had heard of, that hit her the most, it was from this album. Even a newbie thinks this album is great. This is the best album to even start with, and then go back into their discography and listen to all all the stuff from before to see what led them to this. And this kind of is a new phase for the band, in a way. Some people say it's not so Thrice. I mean, Dustin Kansbury best describe this album as sort of being everything we've already technically done since Artist in the Ambulance, but yet also kind of different, and in a way it is. At least like the delivery of it has something different to it in a good way. It hits on all cylinders. It brings everything they've got, and then brings 100%, and then another 100% more to this record. I can't hardly not praise this album any more than I already have between the review I did and now. If you haven't have not been able to buy this album already, and you've already seen them in concert and are blown away, even though I kind of did see them try to do Black Honey from a session thing that they posted on their YouTube page, I might be a little underwhelmed, but that all depends on how the set goes and everything, and what other tracks they're going to do that will go well. And, Dustin Kansbury, I mean, if you could take a Miley Cyrus fucking song like Wrecking Ball and, own the fuck out of it, and, make it the way it probably should have been done as a folky kind of song instead of a poppy song, then yeah, props to you guys. Well, guys, that's it, guys. What'd you think of my list? Where does these Thrice's albums rank for you? Comment below, let me know on that. If you like this video, rock that like button with thrust if you must. Please, I don't get enough of those. And, hopefully if you're in St. Louis at the Pageant, it says 8, I guess, but maybe around 7 more than likely, then I will hopefully see you there. And if you're in one of the later dates, I hope you guys have fun and hopefully get to hear what I have to say. I'll probably try to keep up with it as best I can I might do something special. I may actually do a concert review of this. My first. It'd be kind of cool. And you won't be able to see that till Monday, like the Opeth one. Hopefully you'll see this tomorrow before I go up there to see it and meet up with my girl and everything. And hopefully I'll still be alive by the time the Opeth record and all that other stuff happens. And, as always, guys, till I see you in the next video, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rockin', and peace. Love you all, random rockers.